So oftentimes when we're starting with oil painting, we don't know how to start. We get our paints, we get our brushes, we get everything, we get our nice little easel, everything set up. But how do we begin? Well, I'm going to show you a couple different ways that we can start off. Now, the most common way is, see, I've painted this gray. You know, I've made this a gray. You can also use some burnt sienna. You'll see that commonly. And this is just to tone the canvas. And when you tone the canvas, this allows for you to go just a little bit darker and a little bit lighter. And it's a little bit easier to work on. Now I'm going to plop down some raw umber here, burnt umber actually. And I've got my brush wet from using just paint thinner. And we're going to see what happens if we mix that with a little bit of paint thinner. Now you can see raw umber, look at how transparent that is. See how transparent that is? That's why we use raw umber. It's a really weak color. So you can paint over it with other colors really easily. So I've just watered down or paint thinned down this burnt sienna. I don't want it that runny. I want it a little bit thicker. It shouldn't be dripping. There we go. And you're gonna see how little of this I actually need on my canvas in order to paint with it. So now what am I doing here when I'm painting like this? I'm basically massing in the big main shadows. So this is kind of like this apple type thing that I'm just using it as an example. Now, one good thing when we're starting off, a lot of people get freaked out because they think once it's on the canvas, what are we gonna do? Well, let's watch this. I can just put a bunch of paint thinner on my brush here. Go back here. And I can just erase that if I need to. If that wasn't drawn correctly, I can just erase it. Get some more raw umber on my brush. I don't even need that much, really. And then what you want to do next is basically just sketch in these shadows that you start seeing. You're kind of just making a road map. In the beginning stage of a painting, you're just making a road map to where you're gonna go later. This might be red, and so you go, oh, this is gonna be this value, that's gonna be that value, and so on. So watch this, I'm not even gonna use the paint thinner this time. Just wipe it off magically. You can keep going with this forever. And clean my brush up more. So let's say I'm living in an apartment, and I don't really wanna deal with paint thinner. I don't like having all these paint thinner fumes. So look at this little guy I got here. This is just a little bottle cap, and I put a little bit of drying linseed oil in there. And I stress the importance of using the drying linseed oil because it dries faster. It'll dry in about a day, day and a half to 2 days, whereas normal linseed oil can take up to 5 days to dry. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of that linseed oil on my brush. I'm gonna come back here, grab my raw umber again. And then you can do this, you know, pretty safely inside. Paint thinner is actually a pretty modern thing. I think we've only been using paint thinner for underpaintings for around 150 years or so. So now you'll see I'm using very, very little paint, but I'm just using the oil to help me sketch a little bit more. Then we're gonna figure out, okay, this is lighter, that's darker, this is really dark. Yeah, and this is how you can sketch using just linseed oil. I often paint in my car, and I don't wanna have paint thinner open in my car, so instead I'll just use a little dab of linseed oil. And of course, this can be cleaned up as well. So all I did to get this gray was I just put a couple drops of India ink in with some gesso and then covered it up. So hope that helps you get started and get started painting. Thanks.